Hey, I'm Eternal Savvy.
And I'm Warped Lamp.
Welcome to The Twisted Lantern, a podcast about a single game that we're a little too interested in, Kingdom Death Monster.
So whether you're interested in game design or just want to hear two people talk for a while, this is a good place to be.
So, without further ado, let's light the lantern. Welcome, everyone. I suppose it's pertinent to once again introduce ourselves, just as a matter of tradition and consistency.
That would be a smart thing to do, yeah.
Absolutely, and as before, I'll let you do the honors first, Lamp.
Oh, wow. Well, I'm Warped Lamp, the master of Twisted, and channel runner of twitch.tv/Surprise Run RPG. Tell your friends. We run a wide variety of tabletop games, not including this one.
Yes, indeed, because you can find this game, Kingdom Death Monster, on my channel. That would be twitch.tv/eternal_savvy. We have 2 playthroughs of it currently on the channel, one of which was a very tutorial run, the next one being where we're a bit wiser to everything. But we don't just do that, we do various other games, mainly visual novels, but also a handful of other bits and pieces, so come down, see what you like. And with that out of the way, we can launch straight into what we're talking about on today's episode. Last time you would have seen us, or heard us rather, talking about the actual idea of picking up the game. And now we're going to assume that
you've done that.
Yeah, that you've done that you have picked up the game, or maybe you just want to learn more and you want to lead in from that. So you've picked up the game and you've maybe learnt some of the rules, and we can now cover early game. Maybe you want to know some strategy. Maybe you want to know what's best to do to have better chances of success, or maybe even just to have an easier time that doesn't really frustrate you as much, because that can happen. So one thing that I initially want to just cover is we do recommend that you at least cover the tutorial on your own time, because we're not going to be going over how to play.
Yeah, we don't have time to go over absolutely everything. Well, we do, but we're not going to.
Yeah, we have the time. That's not our job, or that's not what we're setting out to do. We want to talk more about the brass tacks of it all. We're assuming that you've, maybe gone and done the tutorial, and that's kind of what we want to talk about first as well, is we want to praise the tutorial, because if there's one thing that we both quite strongly agree on, it's that Kingdom Death Monster provides one of the most solid tutorials that I've seen in a tabletop game.
Absolutely.
And I think a good way to explain why that's the case is to perhaps lead in with what makes a good tutorial. So Lamp, if you would, what would you say makes a good tutorial?
A quality of a good tutorial, something that I really appreciate, is getting immediate reference for why I'm doing something. Like, I need to know what die I'm rolling and why I'm doing it, and that information is extremely relevant in the tutorial of Kingdom Death Monster, because you're immediately fighting something. It's great.
Yeah, and that is something you would be surprised how many tutorials just won't tell you why you need to do something. And yeah, it makes sure that everything that you're learning, the moment you're thrown in, is only relevant to what's happening, and is only relevant to the immediate threat, which is a white lion which has been set upon you.
It's also good that the game starts you by immediately fighting something, because one, it's action-packed, so your friends won't get bored immediately, and two, the combat's probably the most complicated part of the game. You could make a debate between that or the settlement phase, but as far as like the most practical information you need to be using in the immediate, I think fighting monsters definitely takes it.
Outside of that, the book itself, the tutorial part of the book, is extremely well laid out. It gives you everything as you need it. I think it's a good idea to go over, because we don't want to just sit here praising it all day. We do want to get into an actual strategy for early game, and also you'd be surprised how much strategy there is to the first tutorial lion as well. Because even though it's a tutorial, you would be surprised at how important it is to play through the tutorial every single run.
Yeah.
You're obviously not doing it to learn the rules on the subsequent runs, but there is very strong reason to do so. The first encounter, as we mentioned, is with a white lion who is weaker than normal, and you start off with very base weapons, but there is a couple of things that you might miss to begin with. Namely, the thing that you may not realize is the tutorial line, it tells you to set up the hit location deck in a specific way, which is that you remove one of the cards, which I believe is the Strange Hand, and you put it on top of the deck. And not only is that excellent because the Strange Hand basically encapsulates everything about a hit location that you would need to know, the thing that you won't necessarily realize, the text on that card specifically says that if you crit that location, you can spend a survival on whoever's making the attack to gain a strength permanently. And you'd think, oh, okay, that's nice. If I manage to on my first wound attempt, if I manage to get a 10, I get a nice little bonus. But every single character starts with a weapon, the Founding Stone, which has a special ability, which is that you can throw it and automatically crit. So
yeah, you lose your Founding Stone forever, but you get a crit.
That's not accidentally done that way, because normally at the beginning of the game, you're attacking points blindly. You're just drawing cards and hoping for the best. So an auto crit is nice, but still a gamble, unless you know what the next hit location is. If you don't know where we're going with this, then I'll spell it out. If you spend that stone to begin with immediately upon starting, you can, right off the bat, you can grab yourself a survivor who has 1 extra strength, and you cannot underestimate how valuable that is.
And you can get this every single time you start the game. It's always there.
Always there. Always on top of the deck with the first lion. That is something that you can purposely always do, is come out of the encounter with a stronger survivor. And that, yeah, don't overlook that. Next is also, you may not realize, and you won't realize this because of course you haven't done any other phase of the game yet, but you might actually want to let a survivor die.
Yeah, as counterintuitive as it might sound, considering how much you need guys to play the game, letting one of them die, it's actually an excellent idea.
Especially on the first lion, because you explicitly, you don't have anything to lose yet. You've just started. In fact, you have everything to gain as it goes. Now, that being said, don't purposely go out of your way to get somebody killed. Don't stall the first fight to get somebody killed on purpose, because you might just have to restart.
Yeah, things can go tits up on tutorial line. It's happened to me. It's happened to Savvy.
Yep. I mean, if you want another indication of what this game is like, it is perfectly possible for you to wipe on the tutorial lion. Mm-hmm. And I don't know of many other games which let you just die on the tutorial mission.
And Kingdom Death Monster deftly scratches the back of its neck and says, just do it again.
Yeah, it literally says, what happens if you die? Just try again. just learn how to kill a lion, dude. This is literally,
we're just gonna act like this didn't happen.
This is the base entry level thing you need to be able to do, is kill lions. Come on.
It's the only time in the game it lets you just take a mulligan.
So yeah, keep that in mind, is that you can actually take away from this encounter something which is purposely done. You can actually manufacture yourself an advantage. So other than that, would you say there's anything else to keep in mind during the first tutorial line in general when trying to fight it, Lamp? Is there maybe a strategy for just how to take it on?
The best strategy is to if an attack is going to hit your head, dodge it. Other than that, there's really nothing I can tell you.
Yeah, The beginning doesn't give you many choices, but again, that's on purpose because it wants to teach you the basics. It doesn't want to have to piss about with, like, you know, too much stuff about armor or anything like that. So yeah, other than that, just know to dodge the stuff at the head, because that is, similarly to real life, it is the most susceptible to getting you killed.
Yeah, no, hot secret. If your head gets cut off, you die, and it's not pretty.
It's not especially pretty, no. I've had games where three of the survivors of the 4 in the fight have been decapitated, and then the final one has their head exploded. It tends to happen a lot, so you want to, just maybe dodge those ones. Another thing that you might want to know, this is just like a side rule, which I initially didn't really realize, is that if you are having multiple hits incoming, you do not, if you want to dodge, you do not dodge the hit and then roll a hit location. You actually roll all of the hit locations and then pick which one you're dodging. So if you do happen to roll one that's a head, you can specifically dodge the head location, which is very nice. Right, and also, then to roll into, there is actually a reason why you want to fight the lion every time. And they do offer you an option to not fight the opening lion. They offer you an option to just take a bog standard, I have this many survivors and I gained these resources, and then just skip it. Don't do it.
Yeah, no, it looks like a very convenient thing to include in the game, but it's actually really garbage.
And the reason for that is that it usually hands you fewer resources. And I think it takes away survivors.
Yeah, it takes away survivors without actually killing them, so you don't even get the benefit out of it.
Yeah, and it's so generally you don't want to skip it, and it also doesn't give you the opportunity to get that person with 1 strength, which is obviously very important as well. Now, with that being said, you will gain resources, and we Lamp and I like to imagine, or like to,
we like to fantasize of a perfect world where we get the things we want when we want them, which is not how the game goes ever.
No, it never does, but we can at least give you some pointers on what a good resource pull looks like from the first lion. So take it away, Lamp. I've been talking a lot.
Yeah, sure. So, the most poignant thing to be able to pull from the lion is the Eye of Cat, which is you might not know it yet if you're just starting the game. It's literally the most important item that you can pull.
It is. I would argue that it is literally essential.
Yeah. I wouldn't fight you on that. I'm sure, like, we've played this game a lot. We haven't explored every possibility that exists. So you know what? I'm sure there is some strategy and some series of builds that lets you scoot on by without needing the Eye of Cat. But we don't know what that is. And so you need it.
Yeah, like, it... So for context, the Eye of Cat, the reason that you really, really, really are going to be so glad to pull one on the first lion, is it creates an item called the Cat Eye Circlet. And what that lets you do
is cheat.
It literally. Remember when I said metagame the fuck out of this game? This is the thing that lets you do it. It wants you to. It wants you to metagame. It is the metagame circlet, because what it does is it lets you draw the top 3 hit locations from the not just the lion, any creature's deck, the creature that you're fighting. It lets you reveal them, and then put them back in any order you like.
Yeah, so if you see something bad you don't want to deal with, just stuff it down. Or you see something good you want to crit, stuff it up.
And then immediately throw another auto-crit stone at it, because as we've covered, if you know what the next card is, it's not a gamble.
Yeah. God, I love cheating.
It is fantastic. I'm so glad it builds in a way for you to cheat as standard as well. But yeah, the other reason that you really want to see that thing come up in the first draw is because there is only one of those eyes in the lion resource deck.
Yeah, no, and if you don't get it on the first lion, or the second lion, or God forbid your third lion, you really start feeling it.
And it's another reason why you do want to play through that first line as well, because there is always the off chance that the dice gods are favorable and you actually manage to land a couple of crits on locations which, if you don't know, the lion has a couple of locations that give you resources.
Yeah.
So the more cards you're drawing, more chance of picking up that eye.
Yeah. Next thing you really want to see is the shimmering mane. It's not as flashy as the Eye of Cat. I will level with you, but it does count as 2 hides, which is awesome.
Yep. So to begin with, it lets you create a unique piece of gear from the Caterium, which is the crafting station for the lion.
Yeah, which, correct me if I'm wrong, you don't get that immediately? Do you have to hunt another lion first?
That is correct. You do have to hunt another lion because the tutorial lion is not a regular hunt. So you will actually have to hunt a regular lion before you can get that special crafting station. But you know what? 2 hide, that's the main reason that you're picking it up. That's 2 free pieces of armor if you want it.
Yeah, it's cheap armor, but you know what? It is the security blanket of armor.
Yeah, we'll get to why the base armor is so good in a moment after we have covered the rest of the resources.
Yeah, no. The other batch of stuff you can get from the lion isn't immediately helpful until you get the special lion crafting station, the Caterium. But there are a few unique bones you can get from the lion, which you don't want because they're unique. You want them because they're bones.
And bones, in the early game at the very least, are what you make weapons out of. It's quite simply just, in the early game, it's just translated to hide means armor, bone means weapons. And from our experience, at least, we found that in the very, very early game, in the first couple years, it's tempting to pick up armor. It's more pragmatic and more practical to have weapons.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are doubting our logic on that, put it this way. The faster it dies, the less times it's attacking you.
Yeah.
So, you know...
Or if you want to flip it, the less times you successfully wound it, the more times it can attack you. So you're gonna want, like, at least a quarter decent weapon.
Yeah, because, trust me, when you start... It's a D10 system, right? And the first lion you fight, the tutorial lion, has 6 toughness. So that's like a 40% chance with 0 strength that you're actually going to wound it, which, all things considered, could be a lot worse. When it has 8 toughness, suddenly that 20% chance to wound's feeling real bad.
Yeah.
Even the 1 extra strength off like a dagger is just so bloody helpful against a toughness 8 lion, trust me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Similarly, early armor doesn't last that long in a fight. So, another reason to pick up weapons. It's just straight up, that's our opinion. If you feel that the armor is more worthwhile, by all means pick it up, because there is good reason to pick up a full set of Rawhide to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And it's for that reason that we, in our basic resources, in the basic resource optimal set, you are looking at a bit more flexibility. So do you want to run us over those?
Yeah, sure. So of the basic resources, there's these beautiful things called which is just question mark. You're not really sure what it is. Whatever it is, it's really helpful because it counts as whatever. I think there's a whopping total of 2 of them in the resource deck.
There is.
So pulling 1 of them is awesome, and pulling 2 of them is optimal. That's the beauty of saying this is the optimal start, because even if you don't agree with our stances of prioritize weapons, that's fine because lets you make armor instead.
It's honestly never a bad thing to see come up on a draw. Whenever you see that, it just means, great, that's outstanding, we don't have to make as many hard decisions. Then there's also, is Love Juice one of them?
Yes, absolutely. Love juice is something that you. My stance on love juice is that it is extremely helpful in the very early game, and then as you get further on, it is less extremely helpful. But you know what? Don't complain about it.
Yeah, exactly.
If things are going, you'll really feel it if you need it and you don't have it, because having to just for the perspective on it, it makes it so that you can roll intimacy without having to jump through some RNG hoops. And depending on some early game decisions you make, you can already have enough intimacy RNG hoops.
That is... We've had far too many occasions where we are desperate to have new survivors born, and because we have to jump through that fucking hoop of rolling an 8+ on one of the tables, you just don't fucking have any kids. And then you're just stuck, and you've spent all of your endeavor. So when that love juice comes up, pretty nice.
Yeah, takes a weight off your mind. And then lastly, skulls are kicking around, or rather, skull singular is kicking around the basic resource deck. It's literally just a bone, but it gives you insanity, which I'm pretty sure we made bullet point mention of it before, but insanity's good.
Insanity is good for you because it basically acts as armor for your brain. Yeah. Which is more relevant than you would think. There is a lot of things in this game that can fuck with your head, and in case you hadn't gathered, or in case you thought that psychological damage was the one place where the game let up, no, you can die from psychological damage. So
you can die from psychological damage quite easily, as a matter of fact.
Indeed, and you know what? Sometimes you go up against a monster and it just inflicts psychological damage every time.
It just yells twice, and then all of your survivors are dead.
Yeah, it's that's an interesting way to go. Is when the butcher yells at you, so you have a panic attack and die.
Yeah, that's not the end anyone's rooting for, but
yeah,
sometimes it happens.
But yeah, so there you go. So just to run over that again, you're looking at, from the cat, you want the cat eye, the shimmering mane, and then the claw and the great cat bone, just for the sake of weapons. And then you want love juice, skull, and 2. And at this point, I think it's now safe to then transition into your first settlement phase, and not necessarily just the first settlement phase, but
the first handful.
Yeah, the first handful. So we've got some opinions on basically what the first 5 years should be like, or what you are aiming to do, or at
least what we're aiming to do.
Yeah, again, we are not telling you how to play this game. We just want to give you some tips and tricks and how we play it.
Yeah, if you want our advice, we've gotten through the first 5 years a couple times. These strategies work.
Yeah, put it this way. For every run that's failed, there has been the first 5 years at least. So we have seen those first 5 years far more times than we've seen the final 5, you know.
And that may very well be a statement on how ADHD we are with this game and how much we want to keep restarting.
Yeah, we're just hey, have we ever tried drums? I don't know. Let's drop our current run and forget about it.
We should get back to that sometime.
We really should. Because they're good runs. We'll be doing well, and we'll just fucking drop them because we had another idea.
Again.
But yeah, so settlement phase. Personal opinions on our end. I'm going to try and go through this in order, because there is a certain order of the way that things play out during a settlement phase. Namely, that one of the first things you do is you check the timeline, and you also draw a settlement event card. We're just going to go over the timeline events which are relevant. We're not going to go over returning survivors, because there is no significant decisions to make there, unless someone dies. But yeah, we're not going to go over that one. So for the first year, we're going to skip that. And as for the settlement events, we're going to do a whole episode where we just talk about the settlement events. So, for the most part,
there's a lot of them, and there's different levels of how much you really need to bother talking about them. Because some of them barely do anything, some of them don't affect you early game, some of them really affect you late game, and some of them are the single worst settlement event card in the entire game.
We'll get to that. But yeah, so we're just going to skip over the settlement event cards for now. But with that said, first of all, our opinion is that without fail, every year, your goal upon walking back into your settlement, upon meeting your sons and daughters and uncles, maybe grandpas, who knows how well you're playing, upon marching into that bloody settlement, the first thing you should be doing is innovating. Without fail. Without fail. And that means you're going to need to expend one resource of every type. One hide, one bone, one organ. And the reason is because innovations are the damned lifeblood of your settlement. They are universal bonuses to everything. To everyone, permanently, with some exceptions. So, to give you an idea of why it's so important, there is several places where even having a settlement innovation can save you from just actually ending your run.
Yeah, no, just the fact that you thought of this idea at all means that some disastrous event gets a whole lot easier.
So, for that reason, do not underestimate how important it is to do the innovation every year. And if you aren't doing the innovation every year, because there are years where we've elected not to do so, but it has only been when there is like some integral piece of gear that we need, and it is not often that comes up. And to make things even easier for you, or to give you some more advice rather, there is 6 innovations that start in the innovation deck, and to begin with, on the first time you do it, you only draw 2. So, you might be wondering, what's the best ones to pick up? What kind of priority should you be looking at for those first 6? Because while we're going to do an episode on all of the innovations, the first 6 are always the first 6. They're always in your deck. So, Lamp, take us away.
Yeah, no. For your listening convenience, we've provided our personal take on a tier list, and again, I think we can say with a fair amount of personal confidence that regardless of who you are, every man, woman, and child who's ever even looked at Kingdom Death Monster will tell you that the first innovation you want is Symposium.
Because why would you not?
It literally makes your innovations twice as likely to be good.
And it means that now, I know that we just said that they are universally beneficial, but there is certain cards which you can very easily consider trash cards. Not by virtue of not giving you anything, but by virtue of being comparatively less beneficial than other cards. By a wide margin. So, being able to... So sorry, for context, Symposium lets you draw 4 innovation cards rather than 2 when you innovate.
That's probably a good enough sales pitch, but if that wasn't good enough, it also increases your survival limit by 1.
And as you will learn, the more survival you have, the better, because that is more times you're dodging, more times you're attacking, more times you're moving, and more times you're getting up off of your arse and doing something. So, it's all round just kind of a triple S tier innovation. Like, I think even amongst the entire tier list for every card, Symposium's at the top.
Yeah, no, Symposium's definitely going to be sitting pretty in its own triple S tier, which stands for Symposium, Symposium, Symposium.
'Cause, you know what? It's real disheartening when you spend resources and then the 2 cards you draw are Scarification and Sacrifice, which are both fucking Z tier, to be honest. So yeah. Tell us about the other ones then, after you've had Symposium.
Once you get Symposium, or in the in the dark timeline that is not getting Symposium on your first innovation, which is unfortunately a situation you have to accept is quite possible. If you do not draw that and you have other decisions to make, our personal preference definitely points to drums and the music screen. Actually, a quick bullet point. in case you never noticed, or in case you're just unaware of it, each of these opening innovations represents a different innovation tree between education, science, music, faith, home, and art. I just think that's thematically very nice.
It is.
Yeah, that aside, the beginning of the music tree, drums, very good.
And the reason it's so high up is not just because drums doesn't initially seem like it has as many inherent benefits compared to something like In a Lantern or Paint. But what it does bring is its inherent ability is really, really good. I'd say it's like at least B plus A tier to begin with, but the thing which it has over the other innovations is that the consequences of it, the innovations you add to the deck after you've got it, are also universally good. And comparatively also A and B tier.
Well, alright, the situational asterisks on that, the practical use of like the innovation itself for what's it called, heart flute, that's the one I'm thinking of specifically. That one, what it does out of the box doesn't actually help you very much, but drums has the ability to give you something called synchronized strike, which I'm pretty sure everything in the music tree buffs that ability that drums gives you, so it's a good thing to lean into.
Yeah, you don't underestimate synchronized strike. And also, don't underestimate the fact that drums can give a departing survivor insanity. Because as we said, that's relevant.
It is relevant. It's nice, and really the piece de resistance is that early game you don't really have a whole lot you're going to be spending your endeavors on, so just drum it up, man.
Yeah.
Costs 1 endeavor to gain 2 insanity or 2 survival. It's not like you're doing anything with it.
And what did we say was next up? Was it, I think we said situationally ammonia.
Yeah, situationally ammonia. Both Savvy and I put a lot of priority on ammonia because one, it lets you get leather down the road, and 2, it is the saving grace on one particular settlement event, and if you don't have it, you are straight fizzity-ucked. So we think it's very important, like, if we draw it like we generally want it. It also gives departing survivors +1 survival, but that's kind of a lower point. But we kind of float it here because your own personal priority on it may vary, because there's random hunt events that can just give it to you.
And it's not as infrequent as you would think. It's not only hunt events, so like not only could it be a result of you actually going out and doing a random hunt event, which is just one of the standard ones, the D100 table. It can also happen as a result of one of the lion-specific ones, and on that one, it's usually pretty common to pick it up if you have understanding. I think you need like 3 understanding to get it from lion, and I think from Gorm, because Gorm can give it to you too. As long as you kill it while it has a certain mood active, I think you just get it. Yeah, I believe it's I think it straight up does a move, which is it pisses on you, and
yeah.
If you have the understanding, oh hey, this is piss, I'll take this knowledge home. But yeah, so ammonia's a weird one. It floats around depending on what your priority on it is. We personally highly prioritize it because we've seen what leather can do, and we've seen what plague can do. So
yeah. So we think you should get it, but if you are not as paranoid as us, if the game hasn't spat in your face as many times as it's spat in ours, then just let it float and pick up something else. Which would be next on the list. We put paint. Paint is it's a nifty ability because it gives your survivors the ability to dash, which you spend 1 survival and you can move a second time, which is awesome. If that's as far as you understand it, it's doubly awesome because you can there's certain God, how do you explain the concept of flow points?
Oh, okay, we won't get too much into it because I feel like that's more of an advanced thing. That I'd say that's more of a mid-game thing to start considering when you really have all of your kit together.
Yeah.
But briefly, you will notice on monster cards, on monster AI cards, that there is what seems like an innocuous marking on it, namely a horizontal line with a circle and an arrow on it. They don't explain it in the tutorial because it's not relevant. And it is kind of confusing. That's a flow point. Flow points are places where you are allowed to spend survival to do something. And in theory, you can actually enter situations where you are able to see a move coming and then get the fuck out of town before he can get to you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why dash from paint is very good, is because it's actually going to provide you some situations where you don't just have to sit and take 5 attacks. You can actually just run away mid-attack. Mm-hmm. So that's a very good reason. Second good reason that I want to pick up, which is why paint is fucking awesome and why dash is great. Big mistake that we made, or in our first run, you cannot spend your action to move again.
Uh-huh.
If you played D&D, you will be so used to being able to spend your action to move again. You can't do that. So being able to move again is suddenly a lot more valuable when the monster moves 6 every turn and you can only move 5.
Yeah, you really feel it. Do want to put a quick note on that. You can double move if you get a certain fighting art, I believe.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there is one fighting art, but again, that's
but out of the box, you can't do it.
Yeah, you can't do it. So, you know what? It's far too common. I've seen it happen far too often that we've had survivors on either side of a monster. The monster has full moved in one direction.
And no one can get to them because we don't have dash.
Yep, because it moved 6 and we moved 5.
So it's important to get, but I'd put it more on the lower end of this list because although those situations can and will happen, they don't happen immediately.
Yeah, it's certainly less common with the lion as well. We'll get to the screaming antelope. Next up is the counterpoint to paint, in a sense.
Yeah.
Inner Lantern.
Yeah, Inner Lantern, the other side of the paint coin. Effectively, it fills the same niche of giving you a nifty little trick your survivors can do, but this one lets you surge, which gives you an extra action, which means that you can cut up monsters more. Awesome! Except, if you can't get to them, you can't cut them up. That's why I say paint's a little bit better.
Yeah, it's a fair reason to put it below paint. Also, Inner Lantern's a strange one in terms of its consequences. Paint's consequences, I think, are just very mid-tier. They're whatever.
They're good enough.
Inner Lantern's one is like, you get 1 fucking S-tier innovation in your deck, and you get 1 Z-tier one.
Yeah.
So, because, again, we'll cover this in the innovation episode, but one of them allows you to go into a fight with more armor, which is absurdly good, and the other one
lets you sacrifice your survivors to minimum benefit.
It's just terrible. And last of all, the lowest on the list of the 6 is Havel, and for reasons we'll explain now. Take it away.
Yeah, Havel's pretty low on here because so now it does give you extra survival limit, and it does give your departing survivors extra survival. So that's nice. You know, it's generally quite nice, but it's not a game changer. Not immediately, at least.
And the thing is, we've encountered situations where, like, having that much survival is fucking excellent on the first couple of fights. But the thing to keep in mind, and this is why we're talking about early game, and this is why you might find these innovations in different places on the tier list when we go over all of them, is that you do have to consider how much each innovation is going to clog your deck. And this is the one, I think the one innovation of the 6 that gives you 3 consequences.
Yeah, no, it clogs it up real good.
And the worst part is, all 3 of them are just kind of C tier. They're just fine, which is not really that great in the grand scheme of things. Not in early game.
It can be good if you're leaning really hard into it, but if you have no intention of doing that, it's just taking up space.
Yeah, like, I think the only place I could really think of where I would want to pick up Havel over anything else on the first year, or in the very, very early game, is if you were leaning really hard into Clan of Death.
Mm-hmm.
And Clan of Death, for those who don't know, or have never gotten to it or looked at the card, Clan of Death is one of the end innovations for the home tree, which just makes all your survivors amazing and great at killing across the board forever. So if you want to get that early, I guess pick up Havel on your first year.
Quick asterisk, newborn survivors get that. Not all of them.
Oh, yeah. Very fair point. Very fair point. It makes newborn survivors dope.
So if you want to lean super hard into that and try and get it immediately where you will get the most benefit out of it, more power to you, man. We've never had that work.
The other place I can see Havel being more important is if you are doing a convenient segue into my next point, which is if you're doing a Nurture the Young run. And let's go into what that means now.
Yeah, sure, man.
So, because now
first of all, it's Protect the Young.
That's it. Protect the Young. So, now that we've gone over innovations, there is stuff in the game called Milestones. Are they called Milestones? Principles, that's it. Your settlement will gain principles as certain events are triggered. And there are 4 in total, and each one gives you a choice of 2 different ways to run your settlement. And they are big, big, big changes to how the game is played.
Yeah, they give you big benefits, and important note, it is entirely feasible to get 3 out of the 4 within the first 5 years, so that's why we get to talk about them.
We have actually had several runs where we have managed all 3 in the first couple years. So I'll go over the conditions for each one. So there's Principal Death, Principal Life, and Principal Society. Principal Death, it happens when the first survivor dies.
So that loops us back around to the point of why it's not the end of the world if someone dies immediately. Because you get something out of it. Yay, prizes!
Yeah, it's a consolation prize in the best possible way, because it's a great consolation prize. So that's the first one. Death is if someone dies. Life is if a new life is brought into the settlement. So if you successfully have a kid, which is why we said that Love Juice is an optimal thing to pick up.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's a free kid. It's free childs.
Yeah.
And the last one is Principal Society, which ties into that a little bit, which is if you manage to get to 15 population. And that can happen if you roll really well on the starting population for your settlement and manage to snag a couple of love juices, or maybe even pick up a couple of twins from your first intimacy.
Yeah, it is entirely possible.
And now we get to a pretty fun part. We get to discuss those principles because they're game changers.
Yeah.
So do you want to start us off?
Yeah, no, I'll tackle these in the most practical order because this is the order they're probably going to come up in. So, Principal Death.
Who'd have thought that death comes up first?
Generally, it does. Especially your first time playing the game.
Mind you, there was that run that we managed to avoid that until year 7. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I do remember that. That was an uncharacteristically good run. We did kind of gimp ourselves a little bit by not having at least one person die, because you do get immediate benefits out of it between your 2 options. So with Principal Death, you have 2 ways to go. You can get Cannibalize, or you can get Graves, and we have our bias, but we'll try and leave it out for the moment. So Cannibalize gives you +1 survival limit, and whenever a survivor dies, you get 1 basic resource. Nice. You don't get this if the survivor gets lost, is exiled, or ceases to exist. Don't worry about that last point. It happens sometimes.
Don't worry about it. Just carry on.
The other option is Graves, which is all new survivors gain +1 understanding. When a survivor dies during the hunt or showdown phase, you get 2 endeavor, and whenever a survivor dies during the settlement phase, you gain 1 endeavor.
So, most people initially, as we were, will pick up graves.
Yeah.
Because you may initially underestimate the power of a single resource, especially in exchange for a life.
Mm-hmm.
But the survival is also, it's very powerful as well. But there is a legit reason why you might go for graves, and there is a pretty good reason to go for graves as well. And you know what? I'm not gonna... So in case you hadn't guessed, our bias is towards...
cannibalize.
And I can totally see why somebody would prefer to pick up graves in the long run, because here's the thing. Understanding does often unlock a lot of very cool things for people.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of hunt events that like require you to have X many understanding, and you know what? +1 understanding might not sound like all that much, but like it's quite the nice starting boost, frankly.
Because the good shit starts coming along from 3 understanding and up, including picking up Ammonia for free. So having that initial booster to everybody so that they only need to randomly pick up 2 understanding, which can happen straight away if you play your cards right.
Yeah, man, if you're really good at being lucky, then you can get that no problem.
Exactly, and if you select your survivors carefully for certain timeline events as well, you can just pop them up to 3 pretty early on.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's good reason for that. And also, if you do have an excess of innovations or locations, crafters, that kind of thing, which allow you to roll on certain tables for the cost of an endeavor, having all of that endeavor as the result of somebody dying is very good. It's especially good at feeding into itself in that if you really don't want to be losing people, if you want to give yourself a very big backlog of survivors
if you just want to brute force your way through the game, Graves lets you do that. You can get to the end with Graves very easily, I assure you that. You
certainly can get to the end. That's about all you'll be doing.
Yeah, that wording is very particular. Get to the end. I don't think it's a winning strategy. We certainly haven't won with it.
It is a survival strategy. That's basically what it is. But that being said, there is a lot of very cool tables that you can roll on using Endeavor, and you know what? There are some very cool expansions that you get to explore in cool ways if you have a lot of Endeavor.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're running with Cannibalize, quite frankly, you're probably only going to be stuck with 4 or less Endeavor every year.
Yeah, the best case scenario is 5 because yay cooking. But yeah, no, generally you're going to be rolling with 4 or less.
Yeah, and the reason we love Cannibalize is early game at the very least. Having those extra resources is incredibly helpful because drawing a bone translates to a weapon, and drawing a organ translates to evasion because you can make grease with it.
Or drawing a love juice means that we can segue into the next principle.
Yes, please do.
That's not just me being cute about it. That's happened multiple times.
Yeah, no, legitimately. We've come across situations where the first resources we draw from the tutorial iron don't include a love juice until the first person dies.
And then we get one. So Love Juice lets you roll on the intimacy table, and if you don't horribly beef it, which you can, then you get a new baby, and you get your new principal, which we once again have a noteworthy bias to. There is your options are Protect the Young, which your children are the future. When rolling on the intimacy story event table, you roll twice and pick one result. So if you've ever played 5e, you roll with advantage. Isn't that nifty?
It's very nifty.
It is nifty. Then the other option is Survival of the Fittest, which gives you a +1 survival limit. Whenever rolling on the Intimacy Story event, you roll twice and pick the lower result. So it's like disadvantage. All current and newborn survivors gain +1 strength and +1 evasion, and once per lifetime, a survivor may re-roll a single roll result. They must keep this new result. So every survivor gets +1 strength, +1 evasion, and a re-roll token, and +1 survival limit. You might have noticed a small difference between how much stuff one of these gives you.
Yeah. Like, it is pretty crazy just how much one gives over the other. Granted, if you want to have a lot of kids, Survival of the Fittest is not gonna... It's just terrible, because you will end up with more people... If you keep rolling ones as your lowest number, or twos or something like that, not only are you not going to have a kid, you're going to lose a survivor.
If you get a 1, you lose 2.
Yeah, because both the parents die. That's the point. Fuck me. Jesus, yeah. So to say the least, it's if you are having kids a lot, if you are constantly like, we need more kids, then you could very well just completely destroy your settlement by virtue of just all of the parents dying.
Yeah, and if that's your strat, it's a no-brainer. Protect the young. It synergizes very well with Graves because you get a lot of kids who have +1 understanding as their only noteworthy characteristic, and then they die, and then you get more endeavor, which lets you roll on intimacy more, and then you can get more kids, and then you can continue brute forcing the game.
Yeah. Whereas with Survival of the Fittest, it builds into it the ability to not make having kids a necessity, because the survivors you have are not only killing better, and thus, as we discussed earlier, making it so they're not taking as many attacks, they are also straight up not taking as many attacks because they have evasion, and once per lifetime can reroll any result that they are rolling. And that's not just attacks. That's not just one, like, oh, I want to fish for a critical hit. That is, I rolled a 1 on my severe injury for my head, and my head's about to explode. I'm going to try that again.
Yep.
So all of a sudden, yeah, you might only be sitting on 8 survivors total for a couple years, but they're all fucking hardcore badasses.
Yeah. Now, not to say your hardcore badasses don't come with a downside, because eventually your survivors are going to start dying, and if you have completely ignored the concept of reproducing and making more survivors because of that disadvantage on intimacy, you're going to run out. That's happened to us. It's happened to us a lot.
Exactly, and as we've stated multiple times, you are not going to be in control of some of the deaths sometime. Yes, you do have those reroll tables to prevent the you rolled a 1 die, but there is just occasions where, like, it's like a 5 or below will kill someone. And or even an event just happens which is like someone dies just without argument, you know? So it's gonna happen eventually. So it's by no means a foolproof strategy to just sit on 8 people and ride them until the end of the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why that doesn't work. But for our money, Survival of the Fittest is better.
It is proven to give us better results at the very least.
Yeah, it's definitely more efficient if you're if what you're trying to get out of the game is killing monsters and succeeding.
And actually managing to pick up like more resources to explore more of the gear with as well. That reroll token, I really can't understate how useful that is, because it's anything.
There's so many dice rolls in this game. Like it is any single roll result, anything. So like fucking you're gonna die, undo it. A settlement event is gonna screw you, undo it. Like it is so versatile. It is so awesome, and it is for everyone. Everyone gets one.
You may have noticed that we have a affinity for built-in cheating mechanics.
They're very helpful. And if the game is letting us cheat, we don't have to feel bad about that.
Exactly. But with that being said, Principal Society, which is triggered when you have 15 or more population.
Yeah. So your two options now. I think this is the one. This is the only one that I don't think you and I are in complete agreement on.
We aren't, I believe. I think we actually have differing opinions, to say the least.
Yeah. So your two options are collective toil, which your settlement leans into the storm. If everyone holds strong, you will triumph. At the start of every settlement phase, you gain +1 endeavor for every 10 population. Or you can get Accept the Darkness, which the settlement no longer fears the darkness. Letting go means your resolve cannot be cracked, which lets you add +2 to all brain trauma rolls. I am of the opinion that collective toil is better.
And I generally consider Accept the Darkness to be more beneficial when we're playing. And the reason for that is basically 1 endeavor for every 10 population is great, and don't get me wrong, having that extra one is awesome, but if you're running with survival of the fittest, where it's entirely possible that you won't be running with a lot of people, if you dip below that 10 count, then you've lost the benefits of an entire principle, and it's not likely to come back. And that's why I personally don't think that it's as worthwhile as having just an inbuilt way to not only survive, but pick up the more beneficial roles from psychological trauma. But by all means, I want to hear your opinion on exactly why you think collective toil trumps the other.
Very simply. So, although to my own admission, brain trauma rolls do happen with a certain amount of frequency, I find the later you get in the game, the less likely they are to come up because you have more and more built-in ways to get your own insanity up. So you'll be less likely to even have to roll on that table. And at that point, Accept the Darkness isn't giving you very much. Meanwhile, the bar of staying above 10 population is very easy, and it gives you another endeavor, which is something you're not rolling with a whole lot of if you're doing survival of the fittest. So I think it leans very well into that.
And there's arguments for both, because like my counterpoint then is basically there's a lot of places in the game where you just have to roll on the brain trauma table without insanity being taken into account. But similarly, I can't deny that having an extra endeavor late game can be far more useful than early game.
Yeah. So this is the one where we will not chastise you for your decision.
and we certainly won't provide you with any advice on which one to pick over the other. I think that in general, no, it's just split either way, because we just explained why, if you're picking survival of the fittest, why either one is a good choice. If you're picking Protect the Young, I think collective toil wins out regardless.
Yeah, the collective toil really leans into Protect the Young, because then you're just swimming in endeavor. And then you can have as many kids as you want with 0 stats.
Oh my god. And last thing to mention in regards to the principles, you may very well notice that there is 2 very distinct styles of implied settlements that they
there's definitely 2 different thematic flares, either being horrible people or being empathetic people.
And you know what? Both valid, but it is interesting to say the least, because the ones that are empathetic feed into each other, and the ones that are barbaric feed into each other. Quite literally, in the case of in case of the cannibalism one. But the main thing I wanted to bring up with that is that if you are going full barbaric, you may have noticed, or you may not have, because we've been talking about it for about 20 minutes or so. Each of the ones that would be considered barbaric provide you with survival limit. So it's not uncommon, if you're going for a full barbarian run, it's not uncommon to be sitting on the first year with like 4 survival limit. Which, if you've picked up something like Dash or something to begin with, can be actually crazy helpful in even the first hunt. So yeah, I mean, that's certainly something to keep in mind. Let's briefly touch on Rawhide armor, actually.
Oh, yeah. So,
Rawhide armor, this is something to be said, because as we said earlier, it's completely valid to pick up armor as your first thing, especially since it's Rawhide. And Rawhide is very unique in that It is the first set of armor that you can create, and unlike other TTRPGs or other board games or other games in general, you do not just trash it the moment you get the next tier up. It is actually got a very good argument to be taken to the fucking end game, even. And the reason for that is that if you have a full set of it, you get to just roll. You basically just flip a coin every time you spend a survival, and if you get the high result, you just keep it, and you don't spend the survival. So you literally have, on average, 50% more survival, 50% more dodges, and 50% more everything with that armor on.
It's also worth noting that it's not that you don't spend the survival. You spend it and then you gain +1 survival, which synergizes with anything that triggers when you gain survival.
And it's mental, to say the least. So yeah, I mean, weapons or armor, honestly, up to you. We prefer weapons. Now, first hunt. You've picked your gear. You've gone out to hunt your next lion, and you're going to encounter terrain for the first time. So, first lion. Again, because we like pretending that there's a fantasy world where everything goes right. That being said, this next thing I'm about to mention has happened to us twice. If you roll into the first lion and a scrap pile shows up, and you roll a 10 on it...
You get a scrap sword! Yeah, no joke. Sam and I were doing a run between ourselves. Sadly, we weren't recording because why would we be? But first lion, there's 2 piles of rubble. He goes to one, gets a bone blade. I go to one, I get a scrap sword. And then, suddenly lions aren't that much of a threat anymore.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to not. It's kind of hard not to kill it when you have a scrap sword, because you're suddenly rolling with... You're rolling on a 50-50 to hit it in the first place, which is a big deal. And you have... And you're trivializing its toughness with the strength of that weapon. It is, needless to say, it's a very specific situation, but we thought it might be worth mentioning that if you see scrap piles come up, salvage them. My God. Get someone over to them immediately and salvage them.
Yeah, determine who is the luckiest person and have that person roll a d10.
It is a game changer to get that scrap sword to begin with, but we will... It makes your run easy. That's the point. We're going to pretend that you don't pick that up, because that is ultimately a gamble.
Yeah, no. In most realistic circumstances, you're probably just going to be rolling with like tall grass or collapsed pillars. Like most of the stone destructible terrain doesn't really affect very much. Grass is awesome.
Yeah, like it cannot be understated how useful it is, because it gives you +2 evasion when you're in it. And in case you hadn't gathered, or if you are just listening to this and not playing the game, most creatures, or at least the white lion, all of their attacks always hit on 2 or more. So they have to roll 1s to miss you, and then all of a sudden having 2 evasion really makes a difference, because all of a sudden there's actually a real chance of them missing you. And that can make all the difference. So it's also worth mentioning, you get to set up terrain when you encounter a creature. Except for No, you always get to place the terrain. Yeah, that is right. And it is possible, whenever you pick up the grass tiles, which you always do versus a lion, it is possible to position them in such a way that you can have every single one of your survivors start inside of the tall grass. You can work it out yourself. We always set it up that way, unless there's like a scrap pile. In which case we set it up next to the grass.
Yeah, then we finagle a little bit so we can cheat within the rules of the game.
Exactly. Again, metagame. It's not... When it says it wants you to set up the terrain, it's asking you to set up the terrain in the way that's best for you. Like, if you pick up a giant stone face, which gives you extra range and extra accuracy on ranged weapons, it wants you to place it next to your archer, you know? It's not trying to trick you. The game is not trying to trick you when it gives you control. when it's giving you control, it's asking you to turn the tables to your benefit.
And it's really the only time the game does that. Like it is in your hands. Like, if you have placed the terrain in a way that makes things harder for yourself, that is your fault.
To say the least, yeah. I mean, the other thing, I think, the next thing to keep in mind when you are hunting, or when you are doing, when you're fighting, when you're in a showdown, because hunting is technically a different phase, is assuming that you have picked up a cat-eye circlet. Now, you don't have to look at his hit locations every single turn, because sometimes it's just straight up better to have a fourth person attacking. But do get yourself into the headspace and into the routine
of living fear in trap cards.
Yeah, it's also a matter of just trying to work with probability. Like, if you are starting to see that his hit location deck is starting to get pretty depleted, like there's only a good 5 or so cards and the trap hasn't showed up. By the way, for those who don't know the context, trap cards are hit locations which just straight up stop what you're doing and fuck you over somehow. So they're bad news.
White lions, not that bad. Other monsters, horrible.
Yeah. Unequivocally, I think every other monster has a worse trap card, which it makes sense because the lion's the first creature. That being said, like, you don't have to look at it every single turn, but let's say you're starting to have a bit of a hard time. This is something that's happened a few times with us. We're starting to have a hard time with the next lion, just because the dice are fucking us, or maybe we just don't have the gear that we need. That's the point where you might want to go, okay, we might have a full deck, but I'm going to look at the top 3 cards, and we're going to pick the best crit location to burn a founding stone on, because we need to get a wound off of this guy. Or, if you are rolling with, because this is another situation, and again, another place where you can turn this thing, you can metagame and turn these things to your advantage. If you have managed to pick up, if you're going with armor, and you've managed to pick up the 2 pieces of gear which let you look at the AI deck and reorder it, then, for those who don't know again, when you wound a creature, you get to remove an AI card. So, 2 and 2 together, you put the crit location you want on top, you auto-hit, auto-crit it, and you just so happen to put the worst card on top of their deck and get rid of it.
Yeah, you do an excellent job cheating, the game gets a lot easier for you, and you start feeling good about yourself, and then you hit the trap and are punished for your hubris, because that's the way this game works.
It is, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But, other than that, I think the hunt, the showdown itself comes somewhat down to what you've then picked as your innovation, or what's come up as your innovation, because it's going to be easier or harder depending. It's very hard to talk about it in a very solid terms when there is at that point now some degree of, choice and random chance. I think the only thing that we can really recommend is, as we said in the previous episode, just really be aware of what's coming up next in their deck and position yourself accordingly, and learn stuff like the fact that the lion, as a reaction, tends to like running forward and grabbing people, which can, as you will find out, can really really spell the end for some encounters, because there's cycles that it can get into where if someone gets knocked down and can't get back up, they just are dead.
Yeah, you can get screwed by lion grab, so don't be in front of the lion.
Yeah, like it's simple strategy like that. Like, don't just run in head first. Positioning is incredibly important. Like, if you have no other choice and you really need to get that wound in, by all means, stand in its face and stab it. But, play smart.
But when you do that, you are accepting that the game may very well screw you.
We've had more than a couple of occasions as well where, like, this is always funny, when, like, you go, all right, I know you've just finished your turn and you're still in front of the lion, but I'm gonna run in and hit it from the side. And then he runs forward and fucks over the person who had nothing to do with the attack.
Yeah, no, he just screw your teammates. It's fine when there's only, like, you and me playing, but when other players are involved, you suddenly feel bad.
Exactly. And in that vein as well, we mentioned it in the previous episode, there is a certain advantage to, rather than going into it with, if you have 4 people, rather than going into it saying, this is my character, and then being the sole decision maker over what you do, there is an advantage to just instead being a collective team who collectively decide what each person does as a team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no. Getting too attached to these characters is really is frankly very detrimental to your ability to play effectively.
And suddenly the moments where somebody does accidentally spank its ass and cause it to kill someone who is not the one who spanked it, suddenly when you're the one when you all have like, oh, this is my character, bad blood can breed a lot easier. So
yeah, that's kind of straying from the central point. So let's
get to the other 5 years. Yeah.
Yeah, no, let's get to the rest of this. So you may notice that when we said your next hunt, we assumed it's a lion. You do technically have access to something else. Don't do it.
Yeah.
Year 2, there's an event called Endless Screams where some things happen. Most of it's not really noteworthy, but it lets you fight the screaming antelope. Savvy and I and everyone else that has played this game with us have a lot of really strong opinions about the antelope.
We are still building up to doing a run where we try and give the antelope a fair assessment.
But man, you know, when we have a session, a stream, mind you, where all we do in 1, 3, maybe even 4 hour stream was fight one goddamn antelope.
One level 1 antelope. The basic antelope.
It kind of breeds some bad blood. And here's the kicker. Even with our own personal bias aside, the reason why you shouldn't fight a level 1 antelope immediately is because you get basically nothing out of it.
Yeah. So here's the thing, right? More often than not, with like every other freaking quarry in the game except the antelope, pisses me off. Every other quarry automatically gives you its crafting station once you defeat it.
But not the antelope.
The antelope is the one that makes you sink resources into it. And it is not an insignificant amount either. It is 3 organs and a bone, I think. And it is, so if you hunt an antelope on your 2nd year, which is when it starts being available, if you don't know that, you come home, you realize you don't have the crafting station, and all of a sudden, your special resources may as well just be basic.
Yeah, don't you also need pottery to get the thing?
No, you need pottery and to defeat a level 2 antelope to pick up the 2nd crafting station.
Yeah, the barber surgeon, right?
Yeah, the barber surgeon. Now,
which barber surgeon's awesome.
Barber surgeon is awesome. We'll get to that when we talk more in depth about the antelope and the other locations and stuff.
Point is, fucking take our advice. Don't bother with him.
Yeah, like we're not saying that. We'll get back onto whether because we still want to give it a fair assessment and see if it is generally worth it as a whole. But
within these first 5 years.
No, exactly. First 5 years, you cannot afford to spend the resources on building that crafting station to make it worthwhile. And frankly, the armor and weapons you're picking up from it are not good enough in early game. And that's the main thing. That being said, Endless Screams is useful in that it can give somebody an understanding and a courage. And if you're running Protect the Young, you've already got an understanding, and that's 1 person now 2 points of understanding, and close to the 3rd in order to pick up Ammonia, possibly. So keep that in mind. Then 3rd year, nothing special happens, which is nice.
Which is a blessing.
Butcher.
Yeah, year 4 you hit your first nemesis, the Butcher. So if you've played through this game before, Butcher's not that much of a problem. If you've never played through this game before, he's gonna annihilate you.
Without even really trying as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so So Nemesis, they show up at your doorstep. You have to fight them. The Butcher is not an option. It is not a choice. You have to fight the Butcher on year 4. And as such, that does give you the ability to prepare for him. And as we said, if you don't know what you're doing, if you've kind of been frivolously spending resources without too much direction, he is going to come into your settlement, make 4 people bleed to death, and then walk off. And you're just going to be down 4 population. And it's constructed that way. The Butcher, if you don't know, and you should know, the Butcher inflicts bleed damage. And bleed damage is a mechanic that is a way to kill your character without any regard for exactly how tough they are, which is, again, why your anime badasses can just drop dead like flies if you don't play smart. If you have 5 bleed tokens, they're dead. No question.
Yep.
So you might think, oh, hey, I'm looking at one of the crafting locations here, and I can see that I can make bandages, and bandages let you spend an action to get rid of 2 bleeding tokens. Sweet, I'll spend some hide on that. You can do that, and I'm not going to fault you for doing that, because you know what? Bandages do come in useful later when he shows up again. But for the first one, we have found
that just killing him is more efficient.
Again, that's why we think weapons are such a worthwhile investment. Just like, because he is also very tough. That's the thing. He's going to be the toughest thing that you fought at this point because you've only been killing lions up to now.
So if you haven't scrounged a couple decent weapons together, he's going to show up and you're not going to be able to wound him. And even when you do get the opportunity to, you're going to be repeatedly thwarted by his invincible hit locations.
And that's another thing. This is also the first enemy that you're going to encounter that has a... let me correct myself. The Antelope also has a location like this, but you're not fucking fighting the Antelope. Let's just get past that. The Butcher has a location which is his armored pig shoulder, has a special quality called Super Dense. Super Dense destroys fragile weapons once they hit it. So, for those who don't know, all of your early game weapons, with one exception, are fragile. So he basically marches into town and teaches you, hey, you better start picking up some better weapons soon, bitch, and then kills you.
Hope you got a cat's eye. Yeah, he's got that, which is super dense, and then he's got both of his cleavers, which are invincible.
Yeah, he just straight up parries you.
So that's 3 locations you can't hit, and his trap card, which is really bad news.
Yeah.
So that's 4, and I think he's only got like 15 cards in his deck. Something like that.
Yeah, that's right, but he gets to reshuffle his hit location deck every turn. So
yeah, so
even if you think you've dealt with just leave it at home.
If you think you've dealt with the problem, you haven't.
God. We'll get into exactly because he has some really good shit behind him as well. If you know what you're doing, but we'll get into that when we do a spotlight. The main thing you need to know: go into it with good weapons and play smart, because this is also the first one. If you've picked up a range weapon, if you've got a ranger with a bow hanging back and thinking he's safe, the Butcher's the first enemy that's going to teach you that you cannot do that without playing smart, because he is the first enemy that shows up and introduces you to the concept of cards targeting the furthest survivor. And again, the Antelope technically has those kind of cards as well, but we're not talking about that. Technically, the Antelope's the one that teaches you that, but we're not talking about that. It's really the Butcher.
But don't learn it from him!
Don't learn it from the Antelope. Learn it from the Butcher, please. Yeah, go into that with some good weapons. You will take him down. And if you've got yourself some innovations that allow you to catch up to him, or if you're doing real well, if you've managed to pick up Dash and Surge, you can run in there and maybe even mince him with somebody with a high strength. That's happened several times with us. We've gotten somebody there who can just take him down with a weapon that wounds him twice every time they hit.
Yeah, no, if you're doing really well, it can be an extreme cakewalk. Now, I think that's about all that we should say about him. Although I do feel need to put a note that if you're feeling especially overconfident and that you will for sure be able to kill him before he kills you, he does have one card in particular that exists to make sure that he has a fighting chance at killing you, regardless of how strong you are.
I look forward to talking about the Butcher in more detail, is what we will say with that, because he has some really fantastic mechanics which are worth talking about.
Absolutely.
But yeah, and I think the final thing we need to talk about really is Hands of Heat, which is the 5th year.
Yeah. It is it's this lovely little event. It's one of my favorites because as long as you're not terrible at rolling dice, it is just to your benefit. Yeah, like, it can kill off a survivor, but then again, that's not a surprise. We've versed you on that. But Hands of Heat is really excellent because it does 3 things for you pretty much. Number 1, it gets you an innovation for free, which any innovation you get for free is a good innovation, and it's already a good innovation, so it's really good.
And it gets you that survival limit, doesn't it?
Yeah, I believe that it gives you an extra survival limit. So there's that. It gives a survivor +1 strength, which is always awesome. And if you're not terrible at rolling dice, it gives you Red Fist, which is fucking phenomenal.
Red Fist is unequivocally one of the better fighting arts in the game, and that's because it's a secret fighting art. Which, yeah, I mean, it not only gives you more strength, it also makes it so that yourself and everyone in your party is also more survivable, because you can spend strength tokens to dodge.
Yeah, it gives everyone a +1 strength token, including the person with Red Fist, I'm pretty sure, and you can spend that strength token to use that survival, or you can just hold on to it and use it as strength. It's awesome. Red Fist is awesome.
And the best part is that you can, with one of the expansions, you can actually again metagame it to gain it multiple times.
Yeah, there is a dumb little loop that can happen, because there's a few events that can happen that will trigger Hands of Heat again. And if for some reason you mysteriously lose your furnace before Hands of Heat happens again, you get the furnace again, and that triggers the event line where you get Red Fist again.
It's pretty crazy, and and of course the central thing that it gives you is heat. Because heat is required to craft certain metal objects, including scrap swords, and including monster tooth necklaces, actually, now that I think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And monster tooth necklaces are a very useful item. They are just a flat +2 strength to somebody, which is pretty nice.
God bless.
God bless. Yeah, so Hands of Heat is one to look forward to say the least.
Yeah. It's really the light at the end of the tunnel for dealing with Butcher.
Yeah. If you can get past Butcher with a good outcome, Hands of Heat is just like this nice little reward after you've had a fun cooldown hunt against a lion again.
Then everything's nice again. Everything's nice again, and then everything gets bad again. But that's not for this. That's not for this recording.
I think, in general, the main thing to remember in early game is that it's... Now, we've been talking about a lot of certainties and a lot of, like, optimal strategies and a lot of things to pick up unequivocally in tier lists, all of that jazz, right? But the only reason that we've got this tier list, this personal opinion on exactly what's beneficial and what we think is a better thing to do, is because we've experimented. The first 5 years are an excellent place to experiment because they lay the foundations for what the rest of your run is going to look like. As we've mentioned, we didn't know how good drums were until we experimented and we tried picking it up first, and we discovered that there's this whole new world of other things that you can do as a result of, like, forbidden dance and all of these other wonderful innovations that come as a result of it. So by all means, heed our advice, but we encourage you to try strategies of your own.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, no, you said it very well. These first 5 years are definitely the place to experiment because for one, everything we've outlined here is what's going to happen. Because there's a lot of stuff that happens in this game which causes new events to be added to the timeline. But generally, the first 5 years stay pretty clean. It gets tweaked a little bit if you add expansions or what have you. But generally, like, this is what's going to be here. And further down the timeline, things are going to get really hectic because of the decisions you've made. Or the people who have or have not gotten murdered.
There is a reason that we have decided to go over the first 5 years, because it is the point at which everything is pretty normal. You get into a groove and think it's designed in such a way that the first 5 years are there to teach you. Again, this is why we really like the tutorial, because it steps you through everything bit by bit, and even the first 5 years continue to do that. It gives you these places where it gets you used to the way you're doing things. It gets you used to hunts, used to showdowns, used to settlement setups, but with little changes sprinkled in with random chance and these other timeline events. And then after year 5, they just fucking kick open the gates and they're just like, hey, check out all this other ridiculous bullshit. Deal with it. Have fun.
Deal with it and wonder what you could have done to have different things to deal with.
Yeah, like, I can pretty confidently say that the choices you make within the first 5 years can, not always, but can determine how a run ends up going. And of course, random chance is brought into that as well. But
oh, of course, that goes without saying.
Yeah. I think with that, I think we've covered all the points that we really want to go over. I think the only thing that we didn't really touch on that we intended to was the idea that they also walk you through the settlement phase quite nicely, but that's just a single point.
I mean, like, fucking,
yeah,
just try it, like, you'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it's so nice because it's literally step by step. It's beautiful. The way in which it goes, let's learn the showdown phase. Okay, you're done with that. All right. Let's learn the settlement phase. All right, you're done with that? All right, let's learn the hunt phase. It only ever gives you one small chunk of the game that you have to learn, and that's really lovely.
It's very well designed. Just again, looping it back around to just singing the praises of the developers of this game. They really do an absolutely masterful job, because a lot of thought very clearly went into the tutorial, and really these first 5 years.
Yeah, the game is dripping with intelligent design, and it's
absolutely,
yeah. We are straight up, we've always intended to have a episode of just praising it and gushing about it and saying what we like and our fun experiences with it. And we have heard your comments. We have seen your feedback. There does seem to be some desire for that to happen as well. They do want to hear why we like the game just unfiltered.
Well, that's not going to be a very intelligible podcast at all.
But you know what? It's going to be an interesting episode, to say the least. But yeah, I want to finish up with that. I want to finish up with we've seen the wonderful feedback that we've gotten off of even just the first episode, and the great suggestions that you guys are giving. I have taken all of them to heart, and I've noted down all of them. You guys have some really fantastic ideas. Some of them we were intending to do anyway, as you may have heard, but there were some other really lovely ideas. We had the suggestion to try and get some guests from the community, and while we can think of one or two people, there is very much a this is a relatively niche game, to say the least, but we will do our best. No. I am interested in doing that.
You know, we'd love to touch base with more people who love this game. It's just the fact of the matter is that Seffi and I have really only talked to each other about it.
Yeah. There is.
We don't know who else loves this game.
we will do our best, but the other stuff we can quite happily say that we are planning to do: quarry spotlights, expansion spotlights, card spotlights, even.
Yeah, no. Every excuse to just talk in detail about every little aspect of this game, like. Again, we will take every excuse we can, and I assure you we will not get tired of it. We love this game.
It's crazy. And And of course, we'll do that one last plug as well. If you do want to watch our first 2 runs of the game, then head on over to twitch.tv/eternal_savvy to see our Kingdom Death runs. Now, I will note, we are intending, or at least I'm intending, I think I've gone over this with you, we are intending to, rather than do the whole thing where kind of guests switch out and we just kind of play it very casually, we are probably going to start doing some streams soon where we do it as just Lamp and I, where...
trying our asses off.
Yeah, going full try hard, so you can see exactly how it is that we actually go through the motions with this game. So if you would like to see that, then go on over there, subscribe, follow, keep an eye out, and see when our next Kingdom's Death stream is going to happen, and you can experience what our process is like.
Experience the magic.
The magic of death.
Ooh.
But
Look
yeah.
at you, Mr. Edgelord.
It's Kingdom Death. And I think that's an excellent place to wrap up. Is there anything else that you would like to say before we go, Lamp?
Just a big thank you to everyone who's been leaving positive, negative feedback, really just saying anything at all. Like, the fact that we've gotten any response on this is fan-freaking-tastic.
Oh, absolutely. And you know, seeing this positive response does absolutely inspire me to do as several of you have suggested and find more places to post this, because I mean, we're calling this a podcast, but sure isn't in actual podcast libraries. So I'm going to be taking some steps in order to get that sorted so that you can listen to this on the go without having to have it. Yeah, we're working on it, so you don't have to have the YouTube app open. But in the meantime, bear with us, and we'll keep providing you some wonderful content. So I suppose it's time to douse the lantern. Thanks for joining us, everybody.
Until next time.
Until next time.